Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to a guided math lesson of page 641 in your workbook. So if you do not have your workbook with you, please pause the video, go get your workbook, and open up to page 641. Let's start the lesson. Up at the top, it just gives another example. Now remember, we are working on comparing decimals to the hundredths place using greater than, less than, or equal to. Later this week, we're going to be ticking a little farther and ordering them, either least to greatest to the hundredths place or greatest to least. So what we are doing today is super important that you have a solid understanding. So this is a review of what we have been doing. So up here it says compare 0 and 23 hundredths and 0 and 32 hundredths. They used actually just grids, blocks, and we have a 10 block and another 10 block. So there's no holes here, right? There is no holes. There is 0 holes, but there are 2 tenths. So in the value of the tenths place, we put a 2. Then they have 3 single hundredths. So in the value of the hundredths place, they have a 3. This is 0 and 23 hundredths. For the next one, they have 0 and 32 hundredths. We have 1, 2, 3 complete rows of 10, which are tenths. So there are 3 tenths and 2 single hundredths blocks here. So that's 0 and 32 hundredths. Therefore, 0 and 23 hundredths is less than 0 and 32 hundredths. We can see it with the pictures if we did the blocks, or we can look at it with the value. What we're going to be concentrating on today, oops, let me hide that. You already peeked at it. What we're going to be concentrating on today is, do you understand number 1? And then we'll do you know how before I set you on your own. It says, Sai says, I'm on number 1 under do you understand on page 641. Sai says 0 and 20 hundredths is greater than 0 and 2 tenths because 20 is greater than 2. Do you agree? Explain. I like this question because I am seeing a little confusion with some of you when we're thinking of values of numbers. And we have to remember the decimal point is very, very important. That's good. Very important because it gives you knowledge of what the value to the right is. And I'm not going to keep talking because I'll give you the answer. So I want you to pause the video. There's not much space under number 1, but you can do it on that sheet if you'd like, or get a sheet of loose leaf. And you want to answer the question, showing some work before you write in words what you think the answer is, whether you agree or not. Please pause the video, reread it, and answer the question for just number 1. All right, boys and girls, what I did write was the comparison that I will have to eventually fill in before I explain it. 0 and 20 hundredths is what? Greater than, equal to, or less than 0 and 2 tenths. So I have to prove that. One of the ways you can prove it is with a grid. And if a grid is made up of 100 squares, we have a nice with 10 columns of 10. That gives me a wonderful visual to explain how we could look at it. So, do I have any holes filled in here? No, it would have to be all shaded in. So if we look up here, what I did is just blanks for place value. We have ones, there's the and, so to the right of the decimal point, part is part of a whole. So we have ones place and tenths place, hundredths place. So if I want to know how many hundredths we have here, because we want to start with hundredths, I have 0 holes, so I'm going to put a 0 there, and I'm going to count my hundredths. Each square is a hundredth, correct? So I'm going to count by 2s, just so you don't have to hear me count all the way. So there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 hundredths, right? Because there's 20 squares out of 100 squares. So there's 20, and that's the hundredths place. So I would say 0 and 20 hundredths. Now, the next one, they want me to see 0 and 2 tenths, because that's the tenths place. Well, I have no holes, and I have 2 complete columns of 10. So I'm going to shade in 2 complete columns of 10. Again, don't tell Mr. Gretsch how messy I'm doing this, please. Do not report me. Okay, Well, let's look at it. So we have 0 and 20 hundredths, and we have 0 and 2 tenths. If you don't know already, pause the video and really look at it. If you look at it closely, would I put less than, greater than, or equal to in there? I'm going to put equal. They are the same amount. 20 hundredths is the same as 2 tenths. And again, remember money. If you look here, that's 20 cents, right? If you look here, yeah, we need another line to make it look like money, but that place value would be dimes. What is 2 dimes worth? 20 cents. So that should help you. That is using a grid. Well, we don't always have a grid in our back pocket, do we? But you do have the ability to make a very quick place value chart in order to compare those numbers. So having a place value chart takes seconds to draw up if you are content with your place value. So there's my decimal point. To the left of the decimal point, I have ones and tens. To the right of the decimal point, I have tenths and hundredths. And in 4th grade, we're going up to the hundredths place. So I'm going to put the first number in there. Sorry about that reflection. First number was 0, and let me make sure I have it in the right order. 0 and 20 hundredths. So I have a 0 in the ones place, and then 20 hundredths. So that was the first number. We wanted to compare that, so 0 and 20 hundredths had to be compared to 0 and 2 tenths. So now I'm going to write 0 and 2 tenths underneath it. So I have no whole numbers, and I have 2 tenths. So if I look at them, remember when we do stack style and we compare numbers? Well, stack style, I'm going to compare. We have in the ones place, both zeros. In the tenths place, both twos. In the hundredths place, I have 0 here. Well, what would technically my value be there? Yep, if you said 0, you are correct. So we have equal value. They are both equal. So when we go back to our worksheet, you should have written 0 and 20 hundredths is equal to 0 and 2 tenths. And I agree. Oh, Sai says 0 and 20 is, because 20 is greater than 2. Do you agree? So do we agree with Sai? Sorry, I had to reread it. Always reread the question. Sai says 0 and 20 hundredths is greater than 0 and 2 tenths because 20 is greater than 2. Do we agree with this? No, I do not agree. I do not agree with Sai. And you have the data right there because, and we have it up there, 0 and 20 hundredths equals 0 and 2 tenths. The value is the same in the tenths place. All right, that would be a sufficient answer. You have to answer the question, so I do not agree. And then I have my data. Those of you that are really good with words, you could have written because there are no ones. There's a value of 2 in the tenths place, and there's a value of 0 in the hundredths place. That would even be better than my answer. But what I have written would work. So now what we're going to do is for 2 through 5, you're going to write greater than, less than, or equal to in each circle. You can use a grid. You can use a place value chart. That is what I recommend because you can write those on scrap paper and keep using them. So use any technique, any strategy you want to answer 2 through 5 and then come back to the video. So please pause. Thank you. Okay, here you go. You can check your answers. I will run through them. 0 and 70 hundredths is greater than 0 and 57 hundredths. Those of you that want to think money, 70 cents is greater than 57 cents. In the tenths place, 7 is greater than 5. Number 3, 0 and 41 hundredths is greater than 0 and 14 hundredths. Again, no ones. In the tenths place, 4 is greater than a 1. 6 and 28 hundredths is less than 7 and 31 hundredths. Think money or look at the ones place. 6 is less than 7. This is their tricky one. 1 and 1/10 is what to 1 and 10 hundredths? The ones place is the same, tenths place is the same. We have nothing in the hundredths. They are equal. Remember, I could put a 0 to the right of the tens place and not change the value. So that is what you're going to be doing. From this point on, we are going to be going into the next section on your weekly plans. So I would like you to do the practice buddy. It's the next section in your weekly plans. Thanks for joining me, boys and girls. I miss you.